Hi there, and welcome to Pearced Off, another session of counter-apologetics from Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This time I'm going to speak a little bit about biblical exegesis. That means the analysis of biblical text. But I'm going to look at it from the point of view that to have faith in Jesus or Christianity as a worldview at all requires circularity to the approach, which is an invalid sort of fallacious approach. So here's the thing. The Christian seems to historiographically rate the New Testament over and above the other biblical books, so that the Gospels have what I would call a hermeneutic priority over any other book. That means that the Gospels have privilege, and if there are any sort of issues with the Gospels contradicting or not fitting in with other books in the Bible, the Gospels trump the other books. My last book, The Nativity: A Critical Examination, and my subsequent radio debate with Randall Rounds on the subject, showed that the only time the Gospels are verifiable, that means the only time that they intersect with known facts and verifiable incidents, is during the nativity accounts of Matthew and Luke. So what I mean by this is that every time that Matthew and Luke make claims that are either checkable with themselves, so the claims of Matthew, do they fit in with the claims of Luke, or whether they're checkable with external sources. So what do we know about Herod? What do we know about the geography of the area? So on and so forth. Every time that there is any kind of verifiability in Matthew and Luke, they're found to be wrong. So when one account claims that Jesus' family lived in Nazareth before Jesus was born, and the other account claims that Jesus' family were living in Bethlehem before he was born, we have internal issues between the two accounts. Another example might be where that Jesus' family moved straight to Nazareth after he was born, and another account says that he went all the way to Egypt, where they lived for a couple of years. So we have clear contradictions between the texts, which means that when we try and verify claims of individual texts, at least one is wrong. If we're talking about external sources, then say, for example, any claim involving Herod is to some degree verifiable. What's interesting is that there are no other texts really in the New Testament that are in the same way verifiable. That means that all the claims, so for example the miracles like the wedding of Cana, we have no knowledge of those claims. So we don't know who was involved in the wedding. We don't know anything about the wedding really, and there are no other sources that can lead us to know anything about the wedding. And that's the same for all the other miracle claims of the Bible or of the New Testament. So the only time that the claims do intersect with known facts are the nativity accounts, and the nativity accounts are famously unreliable. As I say, I mentioned that in my book, The Nativity: A Critical Examination. They just fail. They just fail as being verifiably reliable accounts. So, given this, if the only time that they are verifiable, they fail, on what epistemic basis does the Christian have to believe that the Gospels are truthful? So looking at it from a case of probabilities, the probability of the later miracle claims being true is very low, given that the claims that have already passed the nativity accounts, which were verifiable, failed. So the prior probability of these miracle accounts being true is very, very low indeed. So the Christian can't just say, well, okay, I don't really believe the nativity accounts, but I do believe the miracle accounts. As many Christians do, they dismiss the nativity accounts as being, mythological or sort of agenda driven, not quite history. They can't do that. They can't cherry pick the Bible in that way, because the probability of these unverifiable accounts being true must be very low, given that the verifiable accounts have been found to be problematic. You see, the accounts are written by unknown people in unknown times and places, and with utterly unknown sources. And they are written with a pro-Jesus ex post facto agenda. What that means is that the people that wrote the Gospels, when they came to write these purportedly historical accounts of Jesus' life, they were already believing evangelists. That means that they already believed that Jesus was God and that Jesus had resurrected. So that they were, in their writing of supposedly historical accounts, they were fulfilling their own worldview and belief agendas. So this is obviously going to create a lot of bias. So those sort of unknowns are unknowns. We literally don't know who wrote these things, when they were written, who their sources were. We can have educated guesses, but we're pretty much in the dark. We also know that there are interpolations. That means additions or editing that happened to the gospel accounts. So the casting of the first stone in John, we know that was added. We've got earlier manuscripts that don't have that. The end of John, which is always thought to be an interpolation, but we couldn't find an early text which didn't have the end of John in. Well, they've recently found a manuscript without that end of John. So we have real difficulties for the believer, and yet the believer still claims that these texts have what I said as hermeneutic priority. They really are robust and believable texts. So what epistemic right does a believer have to hold this view? Well, it actually comes down to faith, because the evidence doesn't really stand up. But here's a rub. That faith that they have in believing that the Gospels are true is derived primarily from the Bible and believing that the Gospels are true. Without the Bible, what is Christianity at the end of the day? But if you need faith in the Bible to believe the Bible, as opposed to such evidentialist approaches and analysing decent, good evidence and knowing the sources, if you need faith in the Bible to believe the Bible, then you have a circular argument. So you could say that, well, the Christian could have other forms of coming to believe in Christianity, so personal revelation and experiences of God. But the thing is that the Christian that has these experiences always has a firm foundation of sort of a biblical knowledge first. So an Amazonian tribesman does not have visions and revelations from the Judeo-Christian God without knowing something about the Judeo-Christian God. They don't start seeing Jesus in dreams and interacting and praying with Jesus until they know about the Bible. They'd have to have missionary contact. People don't have these kind of intimate experiences of a personal God in a cultural vacuum and in a biblical vacuum. So it's clear that knowledge of the Bible comes first. So the problem then is, as I've said, that this knowledge of the Bible gives people knowledge of Jesus and an understanding of Jesus and a belief in Jesus. But then they need that belief in Jesus and that faith in Jesus in order to get over the evidential problems of the Bible. But at the end of the day, that was what led them to believe in Jesus in the first place. And yet they need faith in Jesus to believe the evidence of the Bible. And so the Christian can't really get around this very circular argument. And as we know, circular arguments are logically invalid. So here is a major epistemological problem for any Christian who adheres to the historical claims of the Bible. So there you go, something to think about. My name is Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Please drop by my blog and check out my last book, The Nativity, A Critical Examination, to have an idea of what I was talking about with regards to the nativity accounts and their verifiability. Always remember to keep questioning.